Thanks for joining the Soar Cast, where we talk about drones, manned aircraft, and satellites, and how they relate to geospatial products found on the Soar platform. Hello everyone, this is Darren with the Soar Cast, and I'm here today with Andrew Dedman from Stratus Imaging, and Andrew is here to talk about some really interesting things that he does with drones, his company does with drones, and so I'll just kick over to Andrew right now. And Andrew, if you could just tell everyone who you are and what you do.
Yeah, firstly, thanks for the invitation. Very excited to come along and talk about drones. So Stratus Imaging started about 4 or 5 years ago. Me with a business partner, my brother-in-law. Mm-hmm. We saw a need for drones in ag. So we looked around. A lot of people were doing other cool stuff with drones, mm-hmm. but we saw ag as a market that we could bring drones in and complement the ag sector. So we started off flying drones with multispectral cameras and providing crop health to farmers. And as we'll talk a bit later on, we've emerged into other technologies within the ag space.
Oh, that's brilliant. So you said 2015. What were you flying back in 2015?
A Phantom 3.
Wow.
It was the professional. So, yeah, it was straight off the production line. So it was all new to me. Very cool. So we strapped a whole heap of sensors to it and cameras. So, yeah, very exciting times.
Yeah, they're old drones, but I still have one and it still works. So good on you for starting out with that. Okay, so we might go a bit more into detail about what Stratus Imaging does in terms of your offering. You've mentioned it's agriculture, but maybe you can tell me, soup to nuts, if you will, what you can offer through drones for agriculture.
So our core business at the moment is providing plot-level statistics and analysis to researchers. So around the state and around the country, there's a lot of small plot research trials that use where they provide seed breeders with certain information. They do different chemical trials. So we fly those and we provide statistics and analytics to the researchers. So we do a lot of those. They're only small, but they're very highly detailed. And then we move into the horticulture and viticulture, where we do vineyards and high value crops, providing crop health, emergence accounts, and a few other things as well. So it's a broad spectrum of what we do, but it's in the ag, and it's looked at the ag sector itself. Okay.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Andrew, for that. I want to tell everyone how I found Andrew and what made me really want to get Andrew on the Soar Cast. And It's good to hear when Andrew said, yeah, sure, I'll come on in. Andrew is, of course, based in West Australia like we are. So I'm going to quote the title of the news article, which was Drones to One Day Swarm WA Crops, Innovator. And that was in the West Australian. And so this is quite interesting because, in fact, Stratus Imaging is the first drone company to be certified with a Civil Aviation Authority in Australia, or in Australia, to be certified in Western Australia. Is that correct?
Yeah, so there's 4 companies around the country. So we're the first one in WA. So there's 3 in New South Wales. Mm.
I just want to point out that West Australia is in fact the largest state in all of Australia. So you guys are the first drone company for swarm certification in the largest.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's just get that clear. Okay, so I think it's probably good to go back a few steps. You did tell us why you guys got into agriculture with drones and why you basically found your niche and nailed it. How long has the process been to get that certification to operate 5 drones at once?
So that started well before we even got involved. So the manufacturer of the drone, XAG, have a subsidiary in Australia called Revolutionary Ag. They spent 2 years dealing with CASA to demonstrate that 5 drones can be operated safely with 1 pilot. Mm-hmm. So they spent 2 years demonstrating, and this is the controller, if you can see that, fairly well. So it's only a little controller, and they went through the process of how the system works and how it can be safely, or how the drones can be safely landed in an emergency. So once they got that approval from CASA, then they can train companies under that system. So even though I can fly up to 5 drones, I can only fly that particular aircraft and that particular system, because that's all been approved.
Mm-hmm.
So that went through for 2 years. Start of this year, we were approached by Landmark, big agronomy company in the country, and they were looking at in their digital technology arm of how to bring spray drones into the ag market. So they reached out to us, and we were very excited about that. So we went down the path with them of getting the drones and how we would go about getting certification to fly up to 5 drones in a swarm formation. So for myself as a pilot, it was 5 days training. So there's 2 parts to how to operate this aircraft. Firstly, you got to operate it in a single formation without a assistance of an automatic system. You got to fly it manually like you would fly a normal drone.
Mm-hmm.
So CASA assessed me on how to fly the drone, which is 38.5 kilos, in a certain patterns and how they assess people. Then the second part of that day was then flying 5 with an automated system, and they throw scenarios at you. There's an aircraft coming into your where you're flying. You need to land this drone, take this drone off, move this one to a safe location. So they really put you under the pump of how to coordinate and manage 5 drones safely. So that was about a 6-month process.
Yeah, so it's quite involved,
yes.
But certainly they want to keep a lid on things, and worst case scenario, the swarm doesn't do what you want it to do, and as you mentioned, there's a panic button. What happens, and how does the panic button sort of work? What happens to the drones?
So on this controller, there's a little button on the side here.
Mm-hmm.
So you basically press that, and all the drones highlight on the screen, and then you just drag 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they will just land safely on the spot.
Wow.
And you got to do that within 5 seconds.
That's brilliant. So it's almost like it's almost gamified.
Yes.
Well, that's really good to know that there is a safety mechanism. We haven't gone over what the benefit. I can think of benefits of having a drone swarm. Obviously, one is one operator for five other drones, but what's the benefit to running multiple drones at the same time?
Well, it comes down to efficiency. So the way you would plan your flight is one would take off, then 30 seconds later, then another one would take off, so they don't all come back at the same time. So as they come back and land, you have a second operator changing out the chemicals and also changing out the batteries. So your efficiency is very quick. Depends on the size of the parcel of land you're spraying, depends on how many drones you would have.
Actually, I want to go back a little bit to how the drones actually are programmed to let's say, fertilize in one area or to apply pesticides. So can you just describe quickly sort of what's the input to build these, if you will, flight maps for the drones?
So at the start of the job, you would define with the farmer or the land you're going to spray the boundaries. So you'd walk around with a RTK station or a rover station, and you'd mark your 4 boundaries, and then the software will then put run lines about 2.5 to 3 metres apart, and that's your swath width. Then once that's all done, you assign each drone to those individual runs. So if you assign drone 1 to line 1 to 5, you can't assign drone 2 to row 4 or line 4. It just won't let you do it because it says there's already a drone there. So once you've got your run lines marked out, and then you start playing with the amount of chemical you want to spray, the droplet size, the speed and the height. So these are all the variables you work through, and a lot of that's based on the label information of the chemical you're spraying.
Wow, that's quite interesting. Another thing that I wanted to maybe talk about quickly, because I think you mentioned that you also do multispectral image analysis with regards to agriculture and how that can improve agriculture. So for those who don't have multispectral cameras or have experience with this, Can you do two things? Tell me what multispectral is, and then two, what's the data you get out of that?
So a multispectral comes from a multispectral camera. Depending on the brand or the make, it basically breaks up the red, green and blue of the light spectrum, and also adds near infrared and far infrared. Those two light bands we cannot see visually, but a plant behaves differently the way it reflects and absorbs near infrared and far infrared. So we can take that information and process it in specialised software, and we can look how crops are behaving based on how much near infrared they absorb or reflect. So a plant that is under stress or under poor health will reflect more near infrared, and then we can look at that. You would look at a field and think that it's perfectly healthy, nice and green, but under near infrared or multispectral, you can see areas of the crop that are not performing well. And that information then is then given to the farmer, and they can go and do some ground truthing, and then apply a chemical, or it might be some weeds that might need addressing. So it's looking at the problems before you can physically see them. It's getting ahead of the game a little bit.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about the hardware. So these XAG drones, that's the name?
Yeah.
XAG drone. And it was interesting off camera, I guess, before we started rolling, we were talking a little bit about where that company came from. So yeah, can you tell us quickly about the company and even share that little bit that I didn't know about them?
So they're a Chinese-owned company, started in 2007. They were the biggest drone manufacturer at the time, but then they pivoted to ag. So at the point, and we'll insert a video of all the drones that have been used in China. There's about 10,000 of them, and they move them around the country as they need them. So it's well-established, engineered equipment that works really well. It's tested. You speak to the guys, and they look at them as more of a piece of hardware, or a piece of. It's not something it's going to break after 6 months or 12 months. It's built to last.
Yeah, no, I think that would lead into my next question, because I think you mentioned they were something like almost 40 kilograms, and I did the math really quick in my head. That's almost 100 pounds for those who are in that measurement system. So almost 100 pounds, and the, what do you call it, the wingspan or the rotor width is about
2 meters.
2 meters. And how long will, let's say they're fully loaded, and we'll get to what they get loaded with, but full weight, how long can they fly?
About 20 minutes.
Okay. And it's kind of a silly question, because we all know that we should fly within line of sight unless there's some sort of special, certification with your governing authority. But do they publish the range, or is I guess if they're autonomous, it's unlimited. Yeah. It's limited by the battery.
Yeah. So it's about 2 kilometers is what you can control with your controller here. But as you say, it's got to be visual line of sight. The drone's been big. It's really good. You can see them, and they're typically about 2 meters off the ground.
Okay. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about the system. So I imagine you can add or maybe they already have it, a video camera, sort of a regular RGB, red, green, blue camera, and then as well multispectral. Could you have all three of those on it at once?
The current drone doesn't have it, but they have a survey version called the X Mission that has a multispectral and an RGB camera built into it. Yeah. So what you would do, you'd fly the farm or the paddock, then identify, and then it generates a 3D model of that farm, and that information then goes into the spray drone. So you can isolate trees and power lines and boundaries, even dams, and it will either go around them or go over them. So if it goes over a dam, it will stop spraying and then start when it gets on the other side.
Oh, that's quite fascinating. And one more thing I might just share with the audience. You mentioned the word RTK, which stands for real-time kinematics. So they're effectively very large survey-grade drones, because they have the ability to communicate with a base station for positional information. So do they have a stated, resolution or ground, the accuracy in terms of distance?
A centimeter.
A centimeter, yeah, definitely. Okay. One more question. for the nerds out there like myself, have they employed LiDAR on these systems?
Not yet.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, soon to come.
Mm.
A few more things about the drone itself, because it would be quite impressive to see, but as you'll see from some of the videos, they're almost as big as a person. I mean, it's not something you throw in the back of the car and,
Yep.
yeah. So they can carry fluids, that they can carry seeds, they can carry fertilizer. How much payload can they carry?
Up to 15 litres.
Okay, 15 liters of whether it's seed or fertilizer.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's brilliant. And you can see in the videos how they have deployment systems, whether they're, I guess it's kind of like an aeration that aerates the pesticide, or even sort of like I can't remember the name of the word, but something that actually draws the seeds out and sort of scatters them. It's quite brilliant. I guess the obvious question is why is this drone being used instead of, say, a small tractor or something like that for things like that, for like the pesticide or the seeds?
So compaction is a really big problem in ag, driving over the ground a lot. So the less you can drive on your field, the better. So drones eliminate that. There's also, when crops get to the later stage, such as canola and some type of beans, if you're driving over your crop, you're shaking those plants and they're falling off. So if you can spray your crop without even getting near your crop, you're going to save on your yield.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, so that's sort of my last series of techie questions.
Yep.
What are the sort of optimization results? Like, what are the actual benefits? The return on investment that you get, like using drone in this fashion. What are the things you get out of your crop, and even you mentioned efficiency. So, what are the sort of dollars and cents around that?
We're still working through return on investment, but a lot of people say that compared to tractors and employing staff, there's a good return. I haven't got the numbers with me, but if you're not employing people to go and hand spray, or you got to spray around dams where you got to chip weeds out, we can come in and do it at a very relatively inexpensive cost.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's good. Thanks, Andrew. That's we usually do these interviews in two parts. So we have the serious questions and we have the not serious questions. And we do a little, I guess we call it this or that. So what I do is I basically throw two things out there, and you pick the first one that comes to mind. So we'll start with the first one: Vegemite or Marmite?
Vegemite.
And okay, when it comes to RC control, your thumbs, do you prefer mode 1 or mode 2?
Mode 2.
Okay, I ghosted you a little bit. No, not the word is ghost. I stalked you a little bit on social media, so I know what you've done in a past life, and it relates to one of your. You'll be able to guess what that career was.
Yep.
And I'll throw some of these things out here, and hopefully the audience gets a chuckle from you about them. So, Wheel of Fortune or Goon Bag of Fortune?
Wheel of Fortune. Say Wheel of Fortune.
Okay. Don Bradman or Don Perignon?
Don Bradman.
Cab Sav or Cardi?
Got to have a good Cab Sav.
Sauvignon Blanc or Champers?
Champers.
Happiest day of the year for you is August 18th or August 29th?
29th, my birthday.
Very good. West Coast Eagles or Frio Dockers?
Well, funnily enough, I don't go for any football team. I'm more of a cricket tragic, but I would say West Coast.
Okay,
if I
very
had to
good.
choose.
Yeah. Okay, and last question: squid and chips or fish and chips?
Fish and chips.
All good. Well, that's great. Thanks, Andrew, for coming in and sharing with us about drone swarms. And we're keen to see where it goes for you. But I'm sure it's going to open new doors. And congratulations on being, say, the first in WA.
Thank you.
To kick this off. Okay. Well, very good. And thanks, everyone, for joining us for the Soar Cast. And that's all we have time for today. Tune in to our next Soar Cast for more discussion on geospatial products and imagery found on Soar.